I mean, I really tried with this one, guys. I still love Slinky Boy, though. We really got Aemon Targaryen, Alicent Hightower incestuous fanfic before GTA 6.
This shit ain't nothing to me, man.
Okay, introductions are in order, I guess. So, I am admittedly a huge fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, and have been since the early days of Game of Thrones. Like many of you all, I discovered this world, these characters, and the lore of this mythos from the smash hit success and immense popularity of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was a series that changed our cultural lexicon in many ways, and despite its catastrophic ending, which now lives in sheer infamy as a model for how not to tarnish your series, your story, and its characters, it is nonetheless a series I still love, and a series I still revisit almost every year due to the impact it's had on my life, and due to the love I hold for its characters and its world. In many ways, and in hindsight now, it feels like the Game of Thrones ending was always going to be this inevitable collision course with reality and fate intermingled. Looking back now, in retrospect, the signs were all there, and sadly, many of us missed those signs because we were also swept up in the grandeur and detail of what was once the greatest fantasy TV series of our time. The disaster of George's unfinished story, compiled with two showrunners who had run out of ideas, conviction, and inspiration, was always going to lead to the pale imitation Thrones endgame that we got. Now, I really hope that we are not heading to a similar scenario with HBO's prequel series, House of the Dragon, in its final season. But I have this troubling inclination to believe that the signs are all there, albeit for very different reasons. The biggest, most glaring, and most egregious problem to me upon finishing Season 3 of House of the Dragon is that of time. This is where the overlaps between Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon become obvious. Game of Thrones stalled and destroyed its character development, well-structured plotting, and the intricate nuances of its world in its final season due to David and Dan's desire to finish the series in 8 seasons, when they were supposedly offered many more seasons and sufficient time to finish the story properly and to allow these crucial key moments room to breathe. Instead, they chose to speed things up simply because they were ready to be done with the story and project. They wanted to move on to new projects and fresh ideas. The problem is, speeding up 2 massive books worth of development and steadily acclimating payoff over 2 bare-bones seasons very much robbed that story and its beloved characters of the time both needed to feel truly earnest and earned in the plot. With House of the Dragon, we are dangerously approaching a similar outcome, albeit the reasons are slightly different. So the showrunners claim that the 4th season of House of the Dragon is the final season, and that it will conclude this massive epic story within the run of 8 more episodes. Now, some of this is the showrunners and writers' choice, but a big part of this ties back into the toxic runoff of Game of Thrones' ending. That ending and the ashes it left in everyone's mouth change things for Song of Ice and Fire projects going forward. Forever. Viewers do not trust these shows in the same way they once did. Viewers are not willing to fork over their time for an entire season of slow development to bide their time for those big, shocking Thrones-level payoff moments like they once were with Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones has soured so many people on this world and its on-screen adaptations. Whether it's a concern of declining ratings, showrunners and writers wanting to be done and finish the story, or a matter of budgetary restrictions, where HBO is not funding this show in the same way Game of Thrones was once funded, it all leads to a potentially shaky final season, where key moments are robbed of their delicate nuance, or they are altogether cut from the ending completely. I think one of the simple facts of the matter is this: HBO does not believe in this series or its viewership potential like they did Game of Thrones in its 6th, 7th, or 8th seasons, before the ending, of course. Part of that is clearly the fault of Game of Thrones' ending's runoff, whereas part of that is clearly on how House of the Dragon has executed many of its key beats and how it has chosen to tell this story. Without the big budget for a series of huge climactic moments in this story's endgame, and without the proper time to let these moments marinate and settle, or to even have them at all, we are treading through treacherous waters, where House of the Dragon might be ensuring another monumentally unsatisfying ending like Game of Thrones. Again, I really hope that I am wrong, guys. I mean, as much as this season and this series has had major problems, and I don't always like what I'm seeing, I still very much enjoy many aspects of this series, and I want to see the on-screen adaptation and version of this story get the satisfying conclusion that it so deserves. But after finishing Season 3, I did some inventory, and I revisited big defining moments from the endgame of the dance in Fire and Blood. And without spoiling anything major for people who have not read the book, there are at least 10 major plot points that simply must happen to get us to the proverbial ending for this story. There are only 8 episodes left of this series, and I don't see HBO or the showrunners pushing this series to 5 seasons and potentially pushing back the completion of this story to 2030 simply to add breathing room when this series clearly doesn't have the viewership or ratings of its predecessors. Big, gnarly CGI Slinky Boy and all his merry chums cost a lot of money, guys. And whatever your reservations or criticisms of this show, you have to admit, HBO has done a fantastic job of bringing these burdensome beasts to life on screen. I mean, these fire-breathing Armageddon doggos look fantastic. They just cost a truckload of HBO V-Bucks, and all that screen time costs us the thing that truly matter in A Song of Ice and Fire. Impactful character moments, the intricate plotting of actions and consequences, and witnessing the human heart in conflict with itself on screen. These are the things that truly define this world, not dragons, and George's story. And I feel like we are heading to a conclusion where those things are, once again, robbed of their time and nuance. Again, I hope I'm wrong, because as much as I have problems with how much of this season was executed, and as much as some of these deviations from the source material are beginning to butterfly effect into disastrous branching alternatives, and as much as we seem to spend so much time in this show wasting time on characters and moments that truly do not matter and are inconsequential to the greater overarching narrative and its eventual endgame, I still very much enjoy this show at its heart. There are many things to love. The performances are still, all around, absolutely incredible. How Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess managed to secure top shelf talent across the board year after year like this is beyond me. All of these actors are firing on all cylinders at all times, like this is the best adaptation of a Shakespeare play or like an Ingmar Bergman film with dragons. They are amazing, and as much as fans hate the deviations, I'm still of the opinion that oftentimes deviations can be interesting when done well. Look at Stanley Kubrick. All that man did was adapt others' works, and every single time he not only perfectly captured the heart of those stories, but elevated them by expanding upon those stories and making them his own with interesting differences and nuances. But the obvious elephant in the room here is that Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess are not Stanley Kubrick, nor is anyone in Hollywood right now. I don't necessarily have a problem with deviations to the plot or expansions to the source material of Fire and Blood, but I feel like they should always be serving the same overarching themes or the ultimate narrative payoff at the heart of the story. And many of these deviations do neither. They are ultimately just distractions that take away from the true gravitas of George's story here. A good example of this from this season would be the dragon fight in episode 7. When this happened, I thought this change would have major implications to the plot going forward. You know, this fight that happens in the middle of the season that does not happen in the book and is an addition. I thought we might be changing the story to suit similar themes from the text through a different lens. I thought key characters might be killed, or alterations might happen to get us to a similar endgame in a way that makes House of the Dragon something special, something that stands on its own. But no, this scene ultimately didn't serve anything. Rhaenyra still ends up loyal to Daemon, Sheepstealer is still alive. None of our characters were truly forever altered by this scene. The ultimate payoff from this scene? Rhaenyra ends up sleeping with Mysaria and betraying Daemon, only for that subplot to fizzle out when Rhaenyra ultimately remains loyal to Daemon, dismisses Mysaria for Essos, and begins her Mad Queen arc. Yes, you could argue that this event sets up important events in motion for the final season, with Mysaria potentially playing a major role in major plot beats in the endgame, but I would say that's a stretch, and these moments probably would have organically happened without the pretty distraction that was that CGI dragon fight. It ultimately accounted to wasted budget, wasted time, and time spent on superfluous fluff that robs key characters and moments of the drama they truly need to flourish. And this is a story that House of the Dragon is no stranger to. And I guess that's my main concern and problem with House of the Dragon as a whole. The dilemma of the show, if you will. The ending to this show seems to forecast a similarly unsatisfying conclusion like its predecessor, due to poor choices, a lack of time, and budgetary concerns. The showrunners seem determined to waste time aimlessly exploring character subplots and moments that ultimately go nowhere, moments that do not serve House of the Dragon, and Fire and Blood by extensions, greater overarching narrative payoffs and its ending. It's like the writers wanted to pigeonhole themselves into a final season where key moments feel rushed or where they can cut out fan favorite moments to serve a half-baked story. And I know it sounds like it, but I don't hate this show by any means. There is a lot to enjoy and appreciate. There is a lot to attach to. Some of the additional character moments and layers of development flesh out these characters and make them more interesting. The clearest example of this, for instance, is with Daemon and Aegon. These are characters that feel truly expanded upon in interesting and thought-provoking ways much of the time. Both are characters that are truly moving the plot along, even if in minor ways at points. And that is why people are so drawn to them, even when they do wretched or irredeemable things. So we will see how this all plays out in time. I really hope that I am wrong. I hope the showrunners are able to give these 10 or so major plot points the time they require. I hope they find a way to fit them all in within what appears to be 8 very cramped episodes of climactic payoff. But looking at the looming elephant in the room of anything A Song of Ice and Fire HBO related and what that can tell you, if we do not learn from history, we are inevitably doomed to repeat it.